All right, so let me just put this out here. When do you think structural inequality will dissolve? By Thanksgiving or Christmas?
It's not an easy opening question.
Maybe Inauguration Day. Well, you're in an interesting position because for the Obama campaign, you did largely qualitative research and focus groups.
That's correct. We had a team of pollsters, about 4 of us during the primary season. We added a couple more for the general election. I started early, actually very early, even before.
Kindergarten?
I'm sorry?
Kindergarten?
I started. Yeah, I was an Obama supporter since 1955. We did focus groups, qualitative research, ad testing, starting back in December of 2006, almost 2 years ago now, all the way through. God, it was like almost the week before election day. We were still out there quizzing voters about their reactions to the contest.
So essentially, you helped the campaign determine what messages really resonated with different subsets of the population you elected?
That's right. We were message development. We looked at how people felt about the contest in general, but we also spent quite a bit of time showing them some of the paid media, the ads people were seeing on TV, both from the McCain side and the Obama side, and from the Hillary side before that, to get people's reaction to how they were looking at the messaging. So yeah, we were focused on messaging.
Okay, so were you the guy behind hope? Was it like originally everything is ruined and you said, no, that's not going to work?
Well, I did not.
I'm just spitballing here.
I did not invent hope, but that kind of came from the candidate himself. And I tell you, hope is a pretty good message. People want hope. Hope over fear, by the way, at the very end, and I can, you can ask me more specific questions here in a minute, but at the very end of the campaign, one of the themes that people really latched onto was hope over fear, a line that the president-elect had used frequently, and the reason it had so much resonance at the end of the campaign is that people were getting scared a lot, especially by the tactics of the Republicans, who had a lot of very frightening ads that they were running at the end of the campaign. So when the president-elect would talk about putting hope over fear, and you saw large swaths of people, middle-class voters across the political spectrum saying that's what we want. We want hope. We're tired of fear.
There's a truism that independents tend to be turned off by negative ads. Have you found that to be the case?
I think everybody these days is being turned off by negative ads. At the end of the campaign here, we just got negative after negative after negative, and I heard people in my focus group saying, please stop this stuff. I can't even listen to these ads anymore. People had, showed me how they would hit the mute button on their remotes when they were talking about watching these ads, or they change the channel, they'd get up and leave the room, but there was no stomach at all for the negativity. People were receptive to Obama's message because it did have a positive edge to it. It did try to bring people together and talk about what we can do rather than what we can't do.
I live in Philadelphia, and the last few days of the campaign, the TV was swamped with Jeremiah Wright negative ads.
Yes.
Did that at all close what would inevitably be a fairly large margin?
Freaked me out, Chris. Chris asked me earlier, like, when did I think that I knew that Obama had won? And I said, not until they called it there, like you saw in that TV segment there. I was so nervous. And I was nervous the week before because this was not the McCain campaign that was putting out those ads at the end in Pennsylvania especially. They decided they had to make a stand in Pennsylvania, and they put out an ad that was led by the National GOP Trust, which is one of these side groups that decided at the end that they were going to plaster Jeremiah Wright with that one, hand motion that he does of not God, bless America, God damn America. They ran that continually, and I was freaking out then because all of a sudden I was looking at the possibility that there would be these scare tactics that I just talked about that would be effective at the end. We were looking at Pennsylvania, knowing that if the McCain campaign was going to win, they were going to have to take a blue state away from us, and Pennsylvania was one they targeted.
Was that ever in play based on?
Never was in play. And our polling had shown that despite Obama losing Pennsylvania considerably to Hillary Clinton in the primary, we found that those working class white folk in the center of the state who had strongly preferred Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama, they came back to Barack Obama in the general election because he was talking to them about middle-class values, about fixing the economy, about fixing health care, speaking to them about the issues that they cared about. So when they saw Jeremiah Wright at the end, I was concerned, being a nervous guy that I am, that it might be effective, but the voters said no, they'd already made their decision. It was a little bit too late.
Well, from an insider's view, how effective was Jeremiah Wright previously? I mean, really, to me, it seemed the most damaging aspects of the attack on Barack Obama were generated by Hillary Clinton's campaign. There was really nothing new other than this kind of socialism piece, which I suspect didn't have such a great resonance on swing voters. But how did Jeremiah Wright impact Obama's campaign during the primaries, and to what extent did that correlate with the white working class electorate?
I think Jeremiah Wright incident was the most damaging to Obama during the primary season. Although his race, the speech on race that he delivered in Philadelphia was a mark that really put him, a landmark that caused voters across the country to look at Barack Obama as someone that could take us a step above. So the Jeremiah Wright incident was damaging, and he recovered with that speech in Philadelphia, when all of a sudden I was hearing people all across the country saying, my God, this man talked to us like we're adults. He talked to us like we're educated. He didn't talk down to us like the politicians normally do. He talked in paragraphs rather than sound bites. Never heard that before. So
there was some suggestion that some advisors said that wasn't a good idea. Because, frankly, there probably hasn't ever been a candidate to do that who was a viable candidate, or really a public figure who did such a thing in such a way, and such a fulcrum.
Mike, this is a great thing, because my recollection is that there was some dissension and some different points of view within the campaign advisors about whether Obama should go out and make that race speech as publicly as he did. And to the credit of the man that's going to be the next president of the United States, he said, I want to make this speech. If I make this speech and I lose because of it, so be it. But this is a speech that needs to be made.
Administration in the campaign, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not too ahead of myself.
We're in number two.
Told me that he had actually begun writing that speech after Ohio, and that it really came to be around these issues of Jeremiah Wright. And actually, it was Farrakhan, you may recall, I'm sure you do, when the late Tim Russell asked Barack Obama to denounce, repudiate, renounce, disavow, make fun of Louis Farrakhan, who was unaffiliated with the campaign, with whom he did not have a significant relationship. And I believe it was around that time that these issues of his racial allegiance or crypto militancy, perhaps, might disturb a lot of people he would need to win the nomination.
Well, the one thing that we found out doing our focus groups early was that, and remember that we're talking to Democrats during the primary season here, and some independents were able to vote in the Democratic primaries. And while I certainly know that there are plenty of racists who are Democrats, it's not just a Republican, there are racists on all sides of the political spectrum. But we found early on that people were willing to look beyond, especially in Iowa. Iowa is a pretty special place. I'm from Illinois myself. It's close. They were familiar with the senator back then, and they were looking at well, what does this man tell us about his ability to lead the country? Where does he stand on helping the middle class and helping healthcare? So when we're hearing a lot of racial cues early on, even though we had some that would pop up in the most unexpected moments. I remember one woman in our focus group, after one of the first things that Obama did to increase his credibility was, in fact, big money was coming into his campaign. All of a sudden people were listening to these finance reports, and my God, this black senator from Illinois made $30 million. Obviously it was a huge benefit to him in the sense that people were taking him seriously where they did not before. I remember one woman in my focus group, and I don't want to always point out the negative, but just to give you a sense, give the audience a sense of what some of the stuff we heard out there. I heard one woman say, well, where's he getting all that money? there's a lot of money out there. You know, it's not just coming from people like me. You know, maybe it's coming from the NAACP.
You know the coffers are overflowing.
30 million from NAACP. But I offer that other sort of example. There were plenty of people that did have these undertones of like, what's really going on out there, and you know, Reverend Wright was one aspect of that. Bill Ayers was another. Tony Resco was another. I mean, the Republicans tried to tie these sorts of associations into questions about Barack Obama's judgment of the people he hangs out with, but the voters didn't care that much about that, because all they really care about is who's going to be out there fighting for me every day, and that's what makes it successful.
I understand that intellectually, but there are many people in this audience who share with me a much more visceral response that goes towards a trend where there are many people who we believe are voting against their economic and household interests because of race, right? And even corporate media loves to talk about it. But essentially, white people who are in an economically deleterious situation, who found ways to not vote for someone who clearly would offer them more solutions than the other. So what was so unique about Barack Obama getting folks who traditionally would not vote for a black person, and statistically have not and would not vote for black people for mayor. So again, I'm in a machine-run town. 8 out of 10 voters are Democrats. I don't think of the 3 black mayors in Philadelphia's history, I don't think a black mayor has ever won a majority of the white vote, and these are Democrats. These are not Republicans. So maybe this is why you're afraid up to 8 o'clock at night on election day. But so what happened? What happened?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it requires a sober answer, because I really do think that we had an alignment of a lot of different factors that occurred during the 2008 election season that allowed us to elect Barack Obama. And I don't want anyone to think that this was something that isn't going to be hard in the future, because I heard the other speakers before us today that talked about the need to be vigilant. And the answer to your question, and your premise is accurate, that there are a lot of white Democratic voters that are not voting for an African American for president because of racial concerns, and you hear this all the time. I heard, before I answer your question, one other anecdote. The focus groups, at the very end, one of the areas where McCain did get some traction was on his tax policy. With the spread the wealth, Joe DeParnage, I'm sure everybody here is aware of.
And there was really traction around that?
A little bit at the end, and the reason was, this gets back to the racial issue here, when we push people about what do you really fear about Barack Obama's tax policies, and some people would say, well, it's Robin Hood, he's taking from the rich, he's giving to the poor. These are the people that are buying them a little bit to the McCain message. But when we really push them, some of these people that still haven't been able to get over race, we're thinking, well, he's going to take money from us and give it to them. And that's the sort of thing that is still out there. And I don't want anyone to think that's not still out there. It's still out there. Just because Barack Obama won the election doesn't mean there's all this fear that he's going to be for them. And we push him, and then some people would say who that is. But the answer to your question about what happened this time was that, I always tell people that the bottom line of what we found in this election was that the risk of the status quo was greater than the risk of the unknown. Here, Barack Obama was the unknown, but the people were so unhappy with what's been going on in the last 4 years. And that's why this message, more of this is bullshit. McCain is more of the same. Same old, same old. This is stuff that's stuck with people. And their self-interest got so much a part of this election that even though some people would not normally take a chance on voting for an African American for some of the white Democrats.
So the world is ending. We'll give it a shot.
The world's ending. The world's exactly right. Exactly.
Well, lot of people joke in communities of color, it's like, we have the most opportunity to win an important office when that jurisdiction is the worst off.
That's right.
Harold Washington, 25 years ago, I was at the victory party there. I was 13. It was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. The city was in a bad, bad situation, but there was great hope, grassroots, multiracial alliances. It was very similar to me. Let me ask you about kind of ethnic differences. Corporate media said, why do Latinos hate black people? And why do we never get a single Latino vote? Or Hispanic, they would say, pardon me. Hispanic Americans. What did you find out about trends among various ethnicities in the Latino community? Because their community is not a community.
Yeah, no, that was one of the most exciting aspects of the research we did in this campaign. We were doing focus groups back in January, well actually all throughout 2007. Even earlier this year we did African American groups in South Carolina. There was like a sea change that occurred there. We also did with Latino voters and Hispanic voters in Mexico and Nevada. And early on, we did hear some concern, some racially based concern that came out of some of those early groups, especially when Hillary Clinton was someone that they felt more comfortable with, especially among the Latino communities in some areas. But what, you know, and then I was very upset about that because here we heard McCain's campaign saying, well, we're going to take all those Latino people who voted for Hillary, we're going to bring them into our camp. As if, you know, not voting for a black guy was #1 on the list of Latino voters. Right. Like, you know, that says it all right there.
And how many did you get? What was the percentage of that?
I think it was 65, and it was like 11% more Latinos voted for Barack Obama than John Kerry when he was there. A huge victory. And a lot of this was outreach, and, you know, and again, I think that the campaign did a really good job of going into having a dialogue with leaders of communities of color other than African American community. That was incredibly important then. There's a coalition that came together because people wanted change, and then the bottom line here, when we went into the Latino communities throughout the country, they were saying, here is a man, Barack Obama, who's talking about the issues we care about, and you know, and I don't want to be Pollyannish about this, but the skin color of Barack Obama didn't matter at that point. It was just this guy that's talking about our interests and dealing with our issues, and that's what we want.
Well, let me use that to segue into, well, maybe the last exchange. When did Barack Obama become really black, but not too black? And did that at all overlap with South Carolina?
It absolutely, yeah. This is a 10-minute answer. We have 2 minutes for it. South Carolina, I think, was a turning point that really caused Barack Obama. Well, 2 of them. Iowa, #1, obviously, because we haven't won the Iowa caucuses. People were not taken seriously. You know, we were doing focus groups among African American voters in Columbia and Charleston, South Carolina, knowing that it was one of the first 4 states that was so important. We did those back in 2007. And what we were hearing from African American voters then was, you know, first of all, we don't know all that much about this Obama guy. You know, the African American voters in South Carolina were no different than voters in the rest of the country. We just vaguely remember that he made a speech in 2004 at this convention. It was really cool. We don't know much more about him. But, you know, the thing that they were saying at that point was, white folk will never vote for this guy. You know, and I don't know that I, as an African-American voter in South Carolina, want to invest so much in a candidacy that is going to lose, because whites are never going to vote for him. You know, I don't know that, why do I want to invest my money in, my time, my energy, my emotion, and my money into a candidate that's going to lose again? And when he won Iowa, all of a sudden people are like, whoa!
Right, and you're like, that's what I thought.
So that was a sea change as far as, oh my God, we have a candidate here that actually has a chance of winning. Then when the South Carolina then you know what happened after that? You know, we all went to New Hampshire thinking it was going to be a slam dunk, and Hillary Clinton came back and won New Hampshire, and actually, in retrospect, that actually made Barack Obama a better candidate, I think, because he didn't have to go on and fight through the primary season. Then we went to Nevada, which was a caucus state. You know, where people in California were very aware of what was going on there, and even though it was kind of a mixed decision, we won more delegates. I know I have to hurry up here. To get to my answer here. But Nevada was viewed as a victory for Clinton. South Carolina was like going to be the last thing. What happened in South Carolina was that we could talk about Bill Clinton and what he said about trying to diminish the candidacy of Barack Obama by saying, you know, Jesse Jackson on South Carolina too. And that mobilized African Americans to the point where they came out in mass. And 95% African Americans in South Carolina voted for Barack Obama in the primary. He won by 40 points, and then all of a sudden this whole climate changed and made him a viable candidate to win the nomination.
Well, thank you for the perspective. Will you be working with the Obama administration or the ongoing relationship?
I'm exploring my options.
Okay. On behalf of the entire audience, I just say, you earned your new puppy.